Part 1. Dr. Peter Williams pulled into his usual parking spot at Westfield Hospital. The morning sun cast long shadows across the lot as he grabbed his bag from the passenger seat. Another day. Another shift in the emergency room. The hospital doors slid open with a familiar hiss. Inside, the usual morning chaos greeted him. Nurses rushing between rooms, the squeak of gurney wheels on polished floors, and the constant beeping of machines. "Morning, Dr. Williams," called Nurse Mary from behind the desk. "We have a busy one ahead." Peter nodded, his mind already elsewhere. 30 years as a doctor had hardened something inside him. He'd seen too much, lost too many patients. These days he went through the motions, counting down to retirement. The emergency doors burst open with a crash. 2 paramedics rushed in, pushing a gurney with a small figure on it. 10-year-old male with severe burns from a house fire, one paramedic shouted. Over 20% of body affected, mostly right arm and torso. Peter approached slowly. Something in him hesitated when he saw the child. A young black boy whimpering in pain, his skin blistered and raw where the flames had touched him. Old thoughts from Peter's childhood in a small, isolated town surfaced unwelcome in his mind. He paused just a moment too long. Behind the gurney ran a tall man, his clothes smelling of smoke, eyes wide with fear. "Please help my son, please." Perhaps Dr. Sanders would be better suited for this case," Peter muttered, not meeting anyone's eyes. Nurse Mary stared at him in shock. "Dr. Sanders is in surgery. This boy needs immediate treatment." The father, Marcus Johnson, caught Peter's hesitation. 20 years as a firefighter had taught him to read people quickly. He recognized what was happening, had seen it before. "My son's name is Oliver," Marcus said firmly, his voice cutting through the chaos. "He's scared and in pain. Whatever you're thinking right now, he's just a child who needs a doctor." The words hit Peter like a physical blow. Shame washed over him as he realized what he was doing, letting prejudices he thought long buried affect his duty as a doctor. In that moment, Oliver cried out in pain, his small hand reaching blindly for comfort. Without thinking, Peter stepped forward and took it. "It's going to be all right, Oliver," he said, his professional instincts finally kicking in. "I'm Dr. Williams, and I'm going to take care of you." The team rushed Oliver into treatment room 1. For the next hour, Peter worked methodically, cleaning wounds, applying treatments, and giving pain medication. With each careful touch, the wall he'd built around his heart began to crack. "Will it hurt forever?" Oliver asked between pained breaths as Peter applied ointment to his burns. "No," Peter assured him gently. "It hurts now, but each day it will get a little better. You're very brave." In the corner, Marcus watched every move, his firefighter's uniform still smelling of smoke. He had run into the burning building himself to save Oliver when he realized his son was trapped inside. When Peter stepped out to order additional pain medication, Marcus followed him. "Thank you for helping my son," Marcus said. Peter couldn't meet his eyes. "It's my job." "But you didn't want to at first," Marcus said quietly. "I saw it in your face." The words hung between them, heavy with truth. Peter had nowhere to hide. I'm sorry," Peter finally said. "There's no excuse for my hesitation. None." Marcus studied him for a long moment. "You know, as firefighters, we don't get to choose who we save. Every life matters the same when a building is burning down." Peter nodded, the simple truth of it striking him deeply. "My son needs a doctor who believes in him," Marcus continued. "Can you be that doctor?" In that hallway, under the harsh hospital lights, Peter faced a choice that would change everything. The easy path would be to hand Oliver's case to another doctor. The harder, more necessary path was to confront what lay in his own heart. "Yes," Peter said finally. "I can be that doctor. I will be." Neither man knew yet how this moment would transform both their lives, or that this was just the beginning of a journey that would heal more than just Oliver's physical wounds. The end part. For the next 3 days, Peter barely left the hospital. Oliver's burns required constant care, and the boy faced a long road to recovery. Each time Peter changed the bandages, Oliver would grip his father's hand and try not to cry. "You can squeeze as hard as you need to," Marcus would tell his son. "Nobody's judging you here." On the fourth day, Peter arrived early to find Marcus asleep in the chair beside Oliver's bed, still wearing yesterday's clothes. The sight stirred something in Peter, memories of his own father who had died when Peter was young. "Has he gone home at all?" Peter asked the night nurse. "Not really," she replied. "Just to grab some clean clothes for Oliver. He's afraid to leave his son alone." When Oliver woke up, Peter began the painful process of cleaning and rebandaging the burns. "How did you become a doctor?" Oliver asked, clearly trying to distract himself from the pain. Peter thought about it. "I grew up poor in a small town. Not many people from there became doctors. I wanted to prove I could. My dad says I can be anything I want," Oliver said. Marcus stirred in his chair. "And he can," he said, his voice rough with sleep. "Though I was hoping for something safer than firefighting." Peter noticed the dark circles under Marcus's eyes. "You need rest," he said. "Proper rest. There's a staff room with a real bed down." "The hall. I can't leave him," Marcus insisted. Oliver looked at his father with concern beyond his years. "Dad, you look terrible. Dr. Williams will stay with me, right?" Peter nodded, surprising himself. "I'll be right here, I promise." After some convincing, Marcus reluctantly left for the staff room. Alone with Oliver, Peter felt strangely nervous. He wasn't used to connecting with patients anymore, especially not children. "Does it still hurt a lot?" Peter asked as he checked Oliver's vital signs. "Yes, but I'm trying to be brave like Dad." Peter sat in the chair Marcus had vacated. "Your dad is very brave, rushing into that fire to save you. He says being brave isn't about not being scared. It's about doing the right thing even when you are scared." The wisdom in those simple words struck Peter deeply. He thought about his moment of hesitation when Oliver first arrived, how he had failed to do the right thing because of old fears and prejudices. "Your dad is a wise man," Peter said quietly. Later that afternoon, Peter found Marcus in the hospital cafeteria, staring into a cold cup of coffee. "May I join you?" Peter asked. Marcus nodded, and Peter sat down across from him. "The first day," Peter began, his voice low, "when Oliver came in, I need to explain." "You don't," Marcus started. "I do," Peter insisted. "I grew up in a place where people feared what they didn't understand. My father had views, wrong views. I thought I'd moved past all that, but in that moment of pressure something old and ugly surfaced." Marcus studied him. "We all carry things from our past." "That doesn't excuse it," Peter said. "I've been a doctor for 30 years. I should be better than that." "The important thing," Marcus said slowly, "is what you do next. Oliver thinks you're the best doctor in the world now." Peter felt his throat tighten. "He's an amazing kid. You've done a wonderful job raising him. It's just been the two of us since his mom died 4 years ago. Cancer," Marcus explained. "We look out for each other." Something shifted between the two men, a new understanding forming where tension had been before. As the week continued, Peter found himself sharing lunch breaks with Marcus, learning about his work as a firefighter and the community center, where he volunteered teaching kids about fire safety. In turn, Peter shared stories from his early days as a doctor, before burnout had set in. One evening, as Peter was leaving, he saw Oliver teaching Marcus a card game the nurses had shown him. "Dr. Williams," Oliver called. "Come play with us." Peter hesitated just a moment before joining them. As they played cards and laughed together, Peter realized something had changed inside him. The walls he had built up over decades were beginning to crumble. Later, walking to his car under a sky full of stars, Peter made a decision. He would not just treat Oliver's physical wounds. He would find a way to help both father and son rebuild their lives after the fire. What had started as his worst moment as a doctor was somehow becoming his chance at redemption. The End Part 3-2. Weeks passed. Oliver's burns began to heal, pink new skin forming at the edges. Peter adjusted his schedule to be Oliver's primary doctor, arriving early each morning to check on him before regular rounds. The physical therapy will be difficult, Peter explained to Marcus one morning. Burns like these can cause the skin to tighten as it heals. We need to keep the joints moving. Whatever it takes, Marcus said, determination in his voice. That afternoon, Peter entered Oliver's room to find the boy crying silently, facing the wall. "Oliver, are you in pain?" Peter asked, rushing to check the monitors. Oliver shook his head. "Some kids from my class came to visit. They saw my burns and got scared. Tommy said I looked like a monster." Peter felt a surge of anger toward the thoughtless child who had said such a thing. He sat carefully on the edge of the bed. "Can I tell you something? When I was about your age, I had a terrible case of chickenpox. The other kids called me Crater Face for months." Oliver turned to look at him. "Really? But your face is normal now." "It healed. And your skin will heal too. It might not look exactly the same as before, but these marks are signs of your courage." Marcus appeared in the doorway, catching the end of their conversation. His eyes met Peter's in silent gratitude. Later that evening, as Peter was preparing to leave the hospital, Director stopped him in the hallway. "Dr. Williams, I've noticed you spending extra time with the Johnson boy," she said. "The nurses tell me you've been coming in early and staying late." Peter straightened his back. "Is that a problem?" "Not at all. In fact, it's the most engaged. I've seen you in years. You used to be our most compassionate doctor before." She paused. "Well, before you started counting down to retirement." Peter hadn't realized others had noticed his gradual withdrawal from emotional investment in his patients. That night he couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Oliver and Marcus, their strength, their bond, and about his own journey as a doctor. When had he stopped caring? When had medicine become just a job? The next morning, Peter arrived with a plan. He found Oliver doing his painful stretching exercises with the physical therapist. "I have an idea," Peter said once they finished. "I know some kids who might understand better what you're going through." That afternoon, with the hospital director's permission, Peter took Oliver in a wheelchair to the children's burn support group that met in the East Wing. Marcus came along, hovering protectively behind the wheelchair. In the bright room decorated with children's artwork, 5 other young burn survivors greeted Oliver. A 12-year-old girl named Emma immediately wheeled over to him. "Is this your first meeting?" she asked. "I was scared my first time too. Want to see my burns?" Without waiting for an answer, she proudly showed the healing scars on her arm. "They used to be way worse. Now my dad calls them my warrior marks." For the first time since the fire, Oliver's face lit up with real hope. After the meeting, as they headed back to Oliver's room, Marcus pulled Peter aside. "Thank you," he said, his voice rough with emotion. That's the first time he's smiled in weeks. "I should have brought him sooner," Peter admitted. "I've been so focused on the physical healing that I forgot about the emotional side." That evening, as Peter was checking Oliver's vitals one last time before heading home, the boy looked up at him seriously. "Dr. Williams, can I ask you something important?" "Of course. Why didn't you want to be my doctor at first? Was it because my skin is dark?" The question hit Peter like a physical blow. He glanced at Marcus, who stood by the window, clearly having already discussed this with his son. Peter took a deep breath. He could lie, make up an excuse, but Oliver deserved better. "Yes," he said finally. "And that was very wrong of me. I grew up around people with bad ideas, and sometimes those old ideas try to come back even when I know better." Oliver considered this. "My dad says everyone makes mistakes. It's what you do after that matters." Peter looked at Marcus, who gave a small nod. "Your dad is right," Peter said, "and I'm trying to do better now." "You are doing better," Oliver said simply. "You're the best doctor I've ever had." Later, walking to his car under a starlit sky, Peter felt tears on his cheeks for the first time in years. A 10-year-old boy had just shown him more grace than he deserved. and in doing so had begun to heal something broken inside the doctor himself. Peter realized now that this journey wasn't just about helping Oliver recover. It was about his own healing too. The end part. For 1 month after the fire, Oliver was ready to go home. His wounds had healed enough that he no longer needed to stay in the hospital, though he would need regular checkups and continued physical therapy. Remember, to change the dressings exactly as I showed you, Peter instructed Marcus as they packed Oliver's things, and these stretching exercises need to be done 3 times daily. We'll manage, Marcus said, though worry lined his face. Oliver sat on the edge of the bed, swinging his legs. Will you still be my doctor when I come back for checkups? Of course, Peter promised. I'll schedule all your follow-up appointments myself. As Peter helped them to Marcus's car, he felt a strange reluctance to see them leave. Over the past month, their daily presence had become important to him in ways he hadn't expected. 3 days later, Peter received a call from the hospital reception. Marcus and Oliver had returned, but not for a scheduled appointment. Peter rushed down to find Oliver sitting in a chair, his face pale with pain. Marcus paced nervously beside him. What happened? Peter asked, immediately examining Oliver's bandaged arm. He got a fever last night, Marcus explained, and this morning he said his arm hurt more than usual. Peter carefully removed the bandage. The healing skin underneath was red and warm to the touch, signs of infection. Let's get him admitted right away. Later, after starting Oliver on antibiotics, Peter found Marcus in the waiting room, head in his hands. It's my fault, Marcus said without looking up. I must have done something wrong with the bandages. Peter sat beside him. Infections happen, even with perfect care. Burns are tricky. But I'm supposed to protect him. First I couldn't save our house, and now this. Peter thought carefully before speaking. When I first became a doctor, I lost a patient, a young woman with pneumonia. I did everything right, followed every protocol, but she still died. I almost quit medicine that day. Marcus looked up. An older doctor told me something I've never forgotten. Peter continued. He said that medicine isn't about being perfect. It's about doing your best and then adjusting when things go wrong. Firefighting is different, Marcus said. Mistakes cost lives. So does medicine, Peter replied gently. But we're not gods. Just people trying our best. Oliver doesn't need you to be perfect. He just needs you. That evening, Peter stayed late reviewing Oliver's case. The infection was responding to antibiotics, but something about the family situation troubled him. As he was leaving, he ran into Nurse Jenny at the front desk. Dr. Williams, you're still here? It's nearly midnight. Just checking on Oliver, Johnson. Jenny nodded. Such a sweet boy. Did you know they lost everything in that fire? Marcus has been sleeping in his car some nights to save money for Oliver's medical bills. Peter felt like he'd been struck. What? But he never said anything about that. He's a proud man, Jenny said. One of the nurses offered to start a donation fund, but he refused. The next morning, Peter arrived at the hospital with a determined look on his face. He went straight to the director's office. I want to start a program, he announced without preamble. For burn victims who can't afford continued care. The director looked up from her paperwork. That's a noble idea, but our budget... I'll donate part of my salary to get it started, Peter interrupted. And I have contacts at the medical college who might help with staffing. The director studied him with new interest. This is about the Johnson boy, isn't it? It's about all the patients like him, Peter said. People who fall through the cracks. Later that day, Peter visited Oliver, who was already feeling better. Guess what? Oliver said excitedly. Dad got me a book about becoming a doctor. Peter raised his eyebrows. A doctor? I thought you wanted to be a firefighter like your dad. I think I want to help people like you helped me, Oliver said simply. That evening, Peter asked Marcus to join him for coffee in the hospital cafeteria. There he explained his idea for the new program. The first patient would be Oliver. Peter finished. All expenses covered. Marcus stared at him in disbelief. Why would you do this? Peter thought about the question carefully. 30 years ago, I became a doctor to help people. Somewhere along the way, I forgot what that really means. You and Oliver reminded me. I can't accept charity, Marcus said stiffly. It's not charity, Peter replied. Think of it as an investment. Someday Oliver might be a doctor who helps another child. That's how healing should work. It spreads outward. As they talked into the evening, a new possibility emerged between them. Not just doctor and patient's father, but partners in something larger than themselves. Something that might help heal the wounds that went far deeper than skin. The End, Part 5. 6 months later, Peter stood in front of Westfield Hospital's conference room, facing the board of directors. Behind him, a simple presentation showed the success of what was now called the Phoenix Program, helping burn victims with limited resources receive ongoing care. In our first 6 months, we've treated 16 patients who otherwise would have struggled to afford continued therapy, Peter explained. The results speak for themselves. The board members nodded approvingly, as Peter showed before and after photos of patients, their healing progress clear and impressive. And who is this young man? Asked the chairman, pointing to a photo of Oliver confidently demonstrating stretching exercises to a younger burn patient. That's Oliver Johnson, our first patient, and now our youngest volunteer, Peter said, unable to keep the pride from his voice. He spends time with new patients, showing them that recovery is possible. After the meeting, the chairman pulled Peter aside. This is remarkable work, Williams. I haven't seen you this passionate in years. The board has voted to make the Phoenix Program permanent with full funding. Peter could hardly believe it. What had started as a way to help one family had grown into something that would help hundreds. That evening, Peter drove to Marcus's new apartment for their weekly dinner. These gatherings had become a tradition over the past months, sometimes at the hospital cafeteria, sometimes at Peter's house, and now at Marcus's new place. Marcus opened the door with a smile. Perfect timing. Oliver just finished setting the table. The apartment was small but clean and bright, filled with a mixture of donated furniture and new items. Photos covered one wall. Oliver in the hospital, Oliver at physical therapy, and newer ones. Oliver riding a bike again, Oliver at school, and one of the three of them at the hospital fundraiser. Dr. Williams, Oliver called from the kitchen. Dad, let me help make the pasta. Over dinner, Peter shared the news about the program's permanent funding. Marcus raised his water glass in a toast. To second chances, he said meaningfully. Speaking of second chances, Peter said, I've been thinking about something important. He took a deep breath. I'm not ready to retire yet, but I am ready to cut back my ER hours to focus more on the Phoenix Program. That's wonderful, Marcus said. And, Peter continued, we need a program director, someone who understands both the medical challenges and the emotional ones, someone who can connect with families in crisis. Oliver looked between the two men, a knowing smile spreading across his face. Are you offering me a job, Dr. Williams? Marcus asked quietly. The hospital board already approved the position. Your experience as a firefighter gives you unique insight, and these past months you've learned more about burn treatment than most medical students. Marcus was silent for a long moment. I never thought I'd leave firefighting, he finally said. But after the fire, everything changed. Dad, Oliver said seriously, you always tell me to help people however I can. This way, you could help lots of families like ours. Later, as they cleared the dishes, Oliver went to get something from his room. He returned with a carefully wrapped package. I made this in art therapy, he said, handing it to Peter. Inside was a framed drawing of 3 figures standing together in front of what looked like a hospital. My family was written across the top in careful letters. Peter felt his throat tighten with emotion. Oliver, this is beautiful. See? Oliver explained, pointing. That's Dad, that's me, and that's you. Peter looked at Marcus, who smiled softly. Family comes in many forms, Marcus said. Sometimes it's the people who stand by you when things are hardest. That night, driving home under a sky full of stars, Peter thought about how much had changed in 6 short months. From his worst moment as a doctor, that terrible hesitation when Oliver first arrived, had come his greatest redemption. The next morning, Peter arrived at the hospital earlier than usual. He made his rounds, checking on current Phoenix program patients, and then headed to Oliver's scheduled checkup. He found the boy already waiting, excitedly telling the nurse about his plans to take swimming lessons now that his skin had healed enough. "Dr. Williams," Oliver called. "Dad said yes to the job. He's filling out paperwork right now." Peter smiled. "That's wonderful news." As he examined Oliver's healing burns, now faded to pink scars, Peter marveled at how far they had all come. The boy who had once made him confront his deepest prejudices was now teaching him about courage. The father who had every reason to be angry had shown him forgiveness, and Peter himself, once counting down to retirement, going through the motions, had found purpose again. "You know," he told Oliver, "sometimes the people we think we're helping end up helping us even more." Oliver nodded wisely. "That's what Dad calls the circle of healing." The end.